Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, an interview with new Indianapolis Motor Speedway owner Roger Penske. What upgrades and other developments can we expect? The president of the Indiana Chamber previews the legislative session. Trendiana takes a look at 2020 food trends. Can a blood test predict cancer relapse? A big name in Indy college athletics is retiring, and our insiders give perspective on the top stories of the week. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. Perhaps the biggest sports story in Indiana last year was the sale of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to Roger Penske. He's already announced millions of dollars in planned upgrades at the iconic venue. What else can we expect? Penske joined Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick to detail his plans.
Roger, thanks for joining us, and welcome to Indianapolis. Officially, you have been a frequent, very high-profile visitor for many years. Now, literally part of the business community and a small group of sports franchise owners here. What are your thoughts about Indianapolis and more broadly Indiana as you begin this journey?
Well, I think that, number one, thanks for having me today. It's an honor. Certainly, when I go back and think about 1951, that's before you were born probably, go back to 1951, and my dad brought me to the Speedway for my first race. Lee Wallard won that race, and I tend to look up in the sky right now in the last couple of days and think about, I hope my dad's watching, because I think about a 14-year-old kid comes in Indy 500 and ends up owning the track and having won 18 times here. It's really something that's just hard to comprehend, and it's just amazing.
Yeah. You have been a part of many deals, high-profile, large deals in your business career. This one, a big deal, it came together pretty quickly, I would say. Can you walk us through or give us some insights or some details on how the deal came together so quickly?
One thing I've learned, if deals take too long to do, they might not be very good. But, it's ironic. Tony George and I have been friends. We've been on other sides of the fence once in a while, but basically pretty good friends. And I was at Laguna Seca, for the last IndyCar race. And fortunately, Newgarden won that race. We won the championship. But on the grid, prior to the race, he said to me, I want to get together and talk about the future. Well, with Tony, I'm not sure really what that meant. I said, look, I'll call you. Well, obviously, I got home on Monday. We knew we were coming here on Thursday for the banquet. So I called him. I said, I'll meet you on Thursday. He said, well, meet me at the Columbia Club, and I'll come in a couple hours early. So I did, and I met with he and Mark Miles, and he rolled out the story about his mom, and I think it was really heartfelt, really a very heartfelt discussion about his mom, his grandfather, the family, the decision by the trustees, and that they would entertain a sale of the Speedway. Now, people have talked about buying it, over the years. I've heard it once, I've heard it 50 times, maybe once a year I was here. But this was real. And I listened and really didn't say too much. And finally I said, I'm very interested. I'll sign a non-disclosure agreement tomorrow, and let's start the process. And think about that from that September date, late September, to early November. We had a definitive merger agreement. And then some 60 days later, we're sitting here today. Yesterday, we made our money transfer. So I guess you'd say that today we are the owners. But more important, I would really say, Gary, that is the way the transaction was handled, the professionalism within Holman, Mark Miles and his team. Really, we had 2 or 3 people inside there. I had 4 people on our side. We used some tax consultants and very few legal requirements, and we just marched through this. And as we went through the process, if we had any stumbling block, our teams did. Mark and I got on the phone in the evening or during the day, and we solved it, because we knew the confidentiality had to be key, and we knew we had to get it done, because if we were going to make any impact on this year's race, we couldn't be negotiating this thing on April 15th. So it was time of the essence. It was the quality of the people we were dealing with, high integrity. And we knew a lot about the place. Now the little things, the legal things, and so we had to go to the IFA, the Finance Authority. We had antitrust we had to deal with. So there was a number of things. We had banks and other things, contracts with many people that had to be, really covered. But yet we had to keep it confidential. But overall, the process was terrific.
This week you sent an email to Indianapolis Motor Speedway customers, and in that email you indicated that they may be seeing some changes as early as this May. Can you give us an idea of maybe some of the changes that may be coming?
Well, let me say this. I've walked every square inch, I think, of this track and places I hadn't walked in the past. And we see a number of areas that we can make a difference. And this is not a difference for us to create more revenue. This is a difference, quite honestly, to make the guest experience better. And I would say to you today that we're going to commit several $1 million on guest experience. We really want to announce those. Some of them are in process today. We haven't checked them off, but I would say by 100 days prior to the running of the race, we'll give the fans and you and the people that we really care about in this market, in this region, in this state, what our plans are. But I know you'll be excited.
As you look at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the property, the whole picture beyond racing, what do you see in terms of the potential and what's existing out there on West 16th Street?
Well, number one, this is an iconic event. It's an event today that has the culture, it has the presence. It's the largest spectator sport in the world. So what I see is my job and our job as a team is to continue to keep that the iconic event it is, point number one. I think number two, one of the things that I look at is what can we do to raise the economic impact for the town of Speedway, the city of Indianapolis, and also the region and the state. So we need to have a plan that's going to build that. And this could be just at the Speedway, internal. It could be external, taking the 1,000 acres that we have. I think that's important. But more important is we're a promoter. This is a sporting event. What's the guest experience? And we all know about Net Promoter Score, NPS. It's interesting, when we did our homework, the Speedway in the 500 has an 85. And guess what? Disney and Apple are in that range. So what we have to do is be able to maintain that as we go forward. And really the fourth area that I think when I look at what we have and what we have to do is take IndyCar to the next level. And it's not IMSP production, it's not the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and it's not IndyCar. I want to have this be one company that it's really transparent, it's a flat organization, and let's use our best skills every single day. And I think with that, we've got to drive data equity within the series, and we've got to take our assets, our human capital, and sit down with these promoters, maybe do IMS Productions, does some lead-in small commercials, maybe social media things that we can do. In fact, we're meeting with one of our promoters next week to help him plan his day. And I think that's very important as we go forward. And really on top of that, you realize that in all sports have had a trouble gaining market share during 2019. IndyCar had higher TV ratings, and also they had higher attendance. We got to sustain that. But more important is keeping the cost of the sport in line so we can attract you or someone else as a car owner and also have the opportunity to bring new young drivers.
Final question, and you touched on this, but your interest in creating additional economic impact. If you could maybe expand on that a little bit, whether it's the town of Speedway, which has undergone a transformation, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, very interested in your presence as well. You see an opportunity to add to the economic vitality of this.
Well, I think that when you're thinking about $500 million today, if we could have a Formula One race, could we have a 6-hour race? All of these events create economic impact. We promote the races in Detroit for the city of Detroit. And we just, in an IndyCar race, is $50 million. So you can imagine if we can bring another key event. Plus, if we look at our real estate, is there a development that we can do to take that core part of the city tied around the Indianapolis 500 or the Speedway? Can we do things? And that's really, that's maybe not today, tomorrow, or next year, but those are things that we've got to, what I call is utilization. There's a lot of utilization that can take place at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in that area. and that's my goal. And we're going to take all of our people at Penske Corp and pull them together with Mark Miles. He's got a great team. And I just want to say this, that Tony and his family have done an amazing job. And I said, I'm going to get my report card 75 years from now, so I won't be around. So I hope the promoter score is still 85, and we've done to make a difference in the community. But that's my goal.
Still to come, what are the top 2020 food trends and where can you find them in Indiana? And Indiana researchers make a discovery about breast cancer relapse. But first, the 2020 Indiana General Assembly is underway. The Indiana Chamber of Commerce is pushing issues ranging from smoking and vaping to a state energy plan. President Kevin Brenniger came in studio with a rundown of key issues.
Short session, and legislature wasting no time. They're at it, including activity around what you say is going to really be one of the top issues at the State House, and that's health care.
Yes, indeed. They went into session on Monday, started having committee hearings immediately, and I do believe that the health care legislation is probably going to be the most impactful legislation for Indiana businesses. They're focusing on more price transparency so that patients and employees and employers know what the price is and the cost is, and maybe you can do a little shopping. Also, curtailing surprise billing, where someone goes into a facility and a doctor that's in network, but somebody else, maybe an anesthesiologist or a radiologist, is involved in their care, and they're out of network, and now the patient gets billed for the difference in what we call a surprise billing.
You and the Chamber have been very intentional about promoting health-related issues, including smoking and vaping. You're back now again. You want to see the minimum age to purchase cigarettes to go to 21.
Yes.
And also vaping products, another big issue.
Yeah, the federal government has said that these products can no longer be sold to anyone under the age of 21, but we're going a step further to say that it would be illegal to possess them. We would also like them to ban flavors on e-cigarettes, because that's what's attracting the young people. Is the idea that you can do something with a fruit flavor, not realize you're getting a dose of nicotine that it's as much as a pack of cigarettes in one cartridge. That bill moved out of a House committee this week and will be on the House floor next week, and we're very encouraged about that, because that's our future workforce, and we know that smoking-related activities cost Hoosier businesses $6 billion a year in healthcare costs, absenteeism, and lost productivity.
So big business issue. Okay, regional economic development continues to be a big issue. You expect some movement on that too?
We do. A lot of details to be worked out, but we're focused on it from the perspective of quality of place. We want to enhance quality of place in around different regions in the state of Indiana, trying to figure out exactly what the structure is, what revenue sources would be made available to municipalities that want to band together and do projects of regional importance that cross municipal boundaries.
Yeah, get some local revenue there. And finally, State of the State is Tuesday. Governor Holcomb, maybe a surprise with some funding issues for teachers. Money for teachers,
so the State of the State address is next Tuesday evening, and he has just this week hinted that with the enhanced revenue forecast that we got in December, that maybe he would make a proposal to enhance education funding, particularly targeted at teacher pay.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that and all those other issues as well. Kevin Brenniger, always great to have you here. Look forward to having you on again during the session.
Look forward to it.
All right.
Later in the podcast, blood testing for cancer relapse risk, and Indy Sports is preparing for a big change. But now, Yelp is predicting some of the top food trends for 2020 based on more than 28 million reviews over the past year. Where can you find them in the Hoosier State? Yelp Midwest Regional Director Brittany Smith joins us for our Trendiana segment.
A lot of information here, 2020 food trends, and this isn't just a random assortment of trends. There's really a methodology to this, right?
Yeah. Our data scientists dug into it, and they're looking at what are the top searches that people are looking for, growth and business trends. There's a lot of thought and data that goes behind this list.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about some of those trends and where you can find them around the state. The first, mocktails and zero-proof cocktails.
Yes, yeah. So thinking about Three Rivers Distillery in Fort Wayne, you wouldn't expect a distillery to have mocktails, but now you're seeing places like that in Fort Wayne having mocktails on the menu. Hotel Tango is another great example of that. And then right downtown here in Platte 99 in the Cityway, Alexander Hotel, they are known for being ahead of the curve when it comes to mocktails, zero-proof cocktails. Dry January is actually a great time for that. More people are looking for healthier options.
Okay, another trend, Nashville hot chicken.
Yeah, you don't have to drive 4 hours south of Nashville to get hot chicken now. A wonderful example of that is Joella's Hot Chicken, which is based out of Louisville and now has several locations throughout Indiana, Bloomington included, and now coming soon in Carmel. And they are known for their delicious hot chicken. You pick the level of the heat that you want to have. They are known also for their pie in the jar. It's a really delicious spot in several locations.
Okay, you didn't think I could pronounce this, but ube is the new matcha.
You
right?
got it. Yeah. That is exactly right. Ube hails from the Philippines. It is a purple sweet potato. It's like a yam, and it is popping up in tons of different dessert options. You'll see it in everything from matcha or to lattes to types of ice cream. Some examples of that would be the Bay Cafe in Fishers. They're doing an Oreo ube milkshake. The Rook in Fletcher Place was one of the first to have it on their menu. It's really delicious and beautiful.
Yeah, and Korean cuisine continues really to be a hot trend.
Yeah, that started off actually sooner in last year in 2019. We noticed that Korean trends cuisine was a very popular search, and you can find that at Three Sisters Cafe in Greenwood, Indiana. It is a beautiful spot, everything made from scratch. And Uncle Toto's, which is located in Bloomington. Dulcet bibimbap, you can get some spare ribs. Yeah. It's really delicious.
So based on this and some other segments we've done, do you think Indiana's becoming a bit more culturally diverse when it comes to food?
Oh, completely, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, just thinking about the Filipino, thinking about ube, now we have several locations throughout central Indiana that you can get Filipino cuisine. Take it back 5 years, and you wouldn't have found several of these options.
And these, as we've talked about before, these businesses, these restaurants and breweries, distilleries, I mean, this really is part of their business model, right?
Yes.
And it's a key part of that that's really driving revenue.
Yeah, and they're looking to reach different audiences. So if you have a brewery or you have a distillery, now they want to offer something that's zero proof, so you can have a whole group of friends go. Even if someone's not a drinker, there's something for everyone there.
Okay, great report as always, Brittany. And there is much more, I should add, in this Yelp report on top food and drink trends for 2020. And you can check out that full report at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. And Brittany Smith, as always, welcome.
Thank you so much, Gary.
And we'll see you again in 2020.
Cheers to 2020.
Yeah.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Still to come, a transition coming at the top for UIndy athletics, and a look at the top stories of the week from our panel of insiders. But first, Indiana University School of Medicine researchers have discovered a way to predict whether triple-negative breast cancer may recur and which women are likely to remain disease-free. It involves measuring genetic material from a tumor in a woman's plasma. Researcher Milan Radovich and breast cancer survivor Ginny Mason joined Kylie Valletta in the business of health.
Milan, we'll start with you. Don't want to get too technical here, but what are you looking for in the blood, and what information does that give doctors and patients?
Absolutely. What we know is triple-negative breast cancer is a very aggressive form of breast cancer. Makes up about 15% of breast cancers and tends to affect younger women, women of African descent, and women who carry something called the BRCA1 gene, which predisposes them to the disease. This disease is typically treated with chemotherapy followed by surgery. And unfortunately, what happens after surgery is that women live in constant fear of this cancer potentially coming back. What we did in this study is we enrolled 200 women with triple-negative breast cancer. We took a simple blood test right after surgery. And if we detected the presence of circulating tumor DNA, or the presence of actually specific tumor DNA material in the circulation, we knew those patients that cancer will come back.
It's fascinating. Immediately after surgery.
Just immediately after surgery, correct.
Jenny, you're a breast cancer survivor, triple negative. What could this mean to patients to possibly be able to get that answer or even a prediction if their disease will come back?
Oh, I remember what it felt like being told that there was nothing else to give me at that time when I finished my chemotherapy and my surgery. Every ache and pain I had, I thought the cancer was back again. And trying to live with that uncertainty is so difficult. This would just be incredible. You'd be able to breathe again and make plans. Mm-hmm.
And another important aspect of this is that it's opening the door to a second study. So tell us about that second study.
Well, it's a fantastic question. What we know is this testing is not really ready yet for clinical prime time to do in a doctor's office, because what we don't know is if we have this information, can we really improve outcomes? So we're really excited to launch our new study called the Persevere trial. This trial will enroll an additional 200 women across 25 sites across the United States. What this trial will do is we'll take women who have triple-negative breast cancer who are positive for the ctDNA after surgery and then assign them what we call a genomically directed therapy, actually a therapy tailored to unique Achilles heels within their tumor makeup.
And so where are you in the progress of that? Are you just enrolling patients now?
We'll be opening in late spring of 2020.
Okay, very good. Jenny, you were diagnosed in the mid-90s, so I can only imagine how you've seen research change since then. What has it been like to watch research progress like that? And do patients recognize this kind of research taking place in their own backyard here in Indiana?
I think sometimes people aren't aware how much is happening. We see news reports and we see things in the newspaper and so forth, but it can take a long time for things to make it from the lab to the patient. And as an advocate, that's a big responsibility for me to make sure patients are aware that we, like you say, we have this right in our backyard. Plus, there are wonderful things going on. You heard me say, 25 years ago, I had no idea whether I would be alive in 2 years, let alone be here 25 years later. So I'm a product of what's happened with research. More and more people are surviving in spite of, sadly, the fact that many of us are still dying of breast cancer. It's not a disease that we have a handle on yet.
And Milan, this research is all part of IU's Precision Health Initiative. Does this discovery really help add momentum to that program?
Oh, absolutely. And not just our program, but to breast cancer worldwide. Actually, the results of our study, I think, set a precedent for how all future clinical trials are done in triple-negative breast cancer. These have implications across the country and across the world, and I think as Hoosiers should be very proud of this. This really builds on our expertise at IU in precision medicine, computational informatics, genomics, medicine, and so on, and we are proud here to be able to be leading the way here at IU.
Well, this is good news, but as Jenny said, more work to be done.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you both for being here.
Thank you so much.
Later in the podcast, our insiders look at 2019 jobs numbers and more. But now, Sue Willey has entered her 17th and final year as Vice President for Intercollegiate Athletics at the University of Indianapolis. During her accomplished tenure, she and the university's athletics programs have earned many honors. She joined Bill Benner on Inside Indiana Sports.
Congratulations. What a distinguished tenure you have had. It's just been remarkable. You started out as an athlete all those years ago.
Yes.
Played 5 sports.
Played 5 sports, coached 5 sports. It was a pretty a different time, obviously, back in those days for participation. But appreciate you having me on, and excited to talk about what's going on and what the future looks like.
Well, and you've had great success at UIndy over the last 17. And I mentioned in the open, the Greyhounds have become one of the Division II's best programs. You finish in the top 10 in the all sports standings virtually every year.
Right. We've had challenges from when I first started as the AD. We had many programs that were led by part-time coaches. So one of the goals was first to get all the head coaches to be full-time, and we've certainly progressed from there. Another challenge, another vision that we had was that we'd like to get our sports fully funded for the NCAA. And thankfully, with the help of the administration and the university understanding the benefits of our athletics, that has occurred. So hiring the right people, not only is the athletics at a great position, but I want to toot the horn of all of our coaches and student athletes. This semester, I just got their grades, and we always have a goal of every sport getting a 3.0 or better. And last year, for the first time, both semesters, every sport, every team had a 3.0 or better. The overall is about a 3.3, and we're almost at 700 athletes. After hearing what midterms were, I was a little worried because I thought, okay, this is going down. And by golly, we had about 3 men's programs that were a 3.0 something, but they still made that 3 points. So just kudos.
Let's talk about facilities improvements. And of course, you got a big boost when we hosted the Super Bowl and you built that magnificent indoor facility.
Yes, absolutely. We were always going to build a facility for our indoor track since we didn't have anything for our over 100 student athletes. The Super Bowl came into, they knew we were going to build new locker rooms, especially for football. And they saw what we were going to do. They came to the table and we said, yes, we'll put off building our track for a year. They helped us make a bigger venue, and we now host the indoor track and field every year for our conference.
I want to talk about, a lot of people don't know this, the NCAA is right here. You have been very active in multiple roles with the NCAA committees, the most prestigious of which is the Championships Committee, and with the end of your tenure as athletic director will also conclude your tenure as chair of that very important committee.
Yes, championships, everybody wants to be on that committee, so I was thrilled to get on it, and I've been very fortunate to be the chair for the last 2 years. I've served on a lot of different committees, but obviously when we think about the NCAA and we think about our student athletes, we think about championships, and so that's the work that we've been doing.
I hate to ask you to do this briefly, but as we wrap up, challenges, opportunities for your successor, and I suppose
Sure.
they're going to hire like 5 people. No, okay.
No, they're not going to. As a matter of fact, I didn't know if they would replace me. I don't know. With the decline of graduating seniors in Indiana, I mean, for all institutions right now, enrollment is the big question. So that enrollment then for a private institution goes to budget. So, of course, budgets are always a concern and something that we have to look at and plan for, be proactive.
Well, again, congratulations on your incredible career. She's a Hall of Famer and just a champion in so many ways. Dr. Sue Willey, best wishes moving forward.
Thank you very much, Bill. I appreciate it. Go Hounds.
Yeah, go Hounds.
And finally, our insiders take on topics including the new owner of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and a record year for investment in Indiana. This week's panel includes Beck Communications Group President Laura Beck, Fagery Baker Daniels partner Murray Clark, and Katz Corin Cunningham co-founding partner Norris Cunningham.
Of course, the big story, I think the big story in the past number of years was the sale of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to Roger Penske Entertainment Corporation. Murray, he took control. He closed on the deal earlier this week, took control. We did an interview, aired at the top of this show. I was part of an event at Banker's Life. He clearly has a very ambitious and I think passionate agenda. But first of all, just that whole sale, there was an emotional piece to it.
Well,
too,
there really
right?
was for people like me and others that have kind of grown up out there. And I think it's worth saying that the impact the Holman family had with that ownership of the track and to the community and the city at large should be noted, and that made it kind of a sad day. I think.
Yeah. How about the future as you look forward?
I think it's awesome, right? If you were going to pick one purchaser, if the community was to pick one purchaser, it had to be Roger Penske, and I think he's got great vision in the short term and the long-sighted vision for the track.
He talked a lot about making improvements to improve the guest experience before this year's race, but also longer term, no specifics, but really wanted to enhance the economic impact of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Yeah, and I think that's really incredibly promising, and I think it's incredibly exciting when you think about the work that the town of Speedway itself has done. I mean, it's invested millions of dollars in redevelopment activities as well, not just in the main street, but pushing forward out to Crawfordsville Road. And then you also think about those zip codes that are adjacent to Speedway and pushing out west. That's really going to also have an impact because some of those are really underserved. So there's some really positive elements to that.
You know, I will say also, Penske is quite the brand, right? I mean, he is in and of himself quite the brand. And marrying that brand with this iconic event and this iconic venue is really going to be something that I hope portends very well for the future and is really going to be an opportunity for it to really take off, for the Speedway to take off.
And he talks about this as an entertainment venue, which it has become, I think, in a lot of ways. But looking at and referencing the what's called the Net Promoter Score that entertainment venues use, that score for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway at 85 ranks up there with Apple and Disney, some of these big brands. So he's very anxious to look at new events, whether they're concerts, other racing events, and those types of things.
Right. And I think the other part, too, is when you talk about that brand piece, you also have to talk about the loyalty, especially from the racing fans. I mean, everyone feels in this community, and I think in the state, such a sense of excitement around that. And it's something that is very bankable for all of us. And, I mean, we've got some great leadership, too.
Economic development impact. The Indiana Economic Development Corporation this week released its annual report saying 2019 was a record year for jobs and investment in the state. About 300 companies with commitments to locate or expand in the state. But also, Norris, and I'll start with you on this, the average wage at, I think, $28.60 an hour, the highest since the IEDC was formed.
Yeah, that's actually one of the most impressive feats. I mean, the overall number of $8.4 billion, I think, in terms of investments and commitments, at least, I think is really important. But the idea that these new jobs are something like 20 to 21% higher than the current average wage in the state is really promising, because ultimately that's what we're looking for, right? It's not just growth in terms of number of jobs, but actual wage growth, high-tech jobs, high-paying jobs, and we're starting to see that more and more. And this is the proof in the pudding that statistically it's going there.
As you look at the numbers, Murray, whether it's the average wage, foreign direct investments, so a lot of international companies, Saab and Solimtech and some of these international companies as well.
Well, I believe the IDC is maybe the most high-performing agency of state government. This doesn't happen by chance. They've been intentional in terms of international travel and so forth. And I think the increase in average wage is intentional as well. I think there's a more of a concern about that in IEDC, and frankly for local governments as well, with economic incentives.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's always this news is always very positive, but I think it's always important not to be the person who rains on the parade, but it's important that we recognize that these are commitments.
Yep.
And a commitment is not a job created. And if those commitments aren't made and incentives are tied to that, then I would hope that state government is taking the appropriate measures to get our investments back through the clawbacks.
Absolutely. You mentioned tech expansion, interesting, the VC and the venture capital world, more focus, Indiana coming into more focus there. Chicago VC firm announced, M25 announced plans to really grow its presence here in Indianapolis, and Katie Burge, who had led the co-working space downtown, launched Indy, taking over there.
Yeah, I think that it's a great move to get somebody like Katie Burge, who's obviously got a very good reputation in the tech community, Indiana tech community already. But what I like about M25 in particular is their focus on venture capital investments in the Midwest solely. And Indiana has reaped some real benefit from that already, and the idea that they would put an office here now, I think, is a step in the right direction for continuing to grow that as well.
One more for you, Norris. Anantha Shaker, very high-profile scientist, entrepreneur, started a number of companies here in Indiana, leaving the IU School of Medicine, going to the University of Pittsburgh, going to be their top, I think, research guy there, and head the med school there. Big loss for Indiana, really.
Yes, it is. It's a big loss. I think that a lot of what's been done, though, with respect to the growth in life sciences and health sciences in Indiana generally, has been fantastic. The Precision Health Initiative that he helmed, some really lofty goals there that hopefully will continue. They were looking at trying to cure at least one cancer in the next 10 years, cure one childhood disease within the next 10 years. And so hopefully those things will continue to move forward without him. But yeah, it's a big loss to see him go to Pittsburgh.
Laura and Murray, I'll give you the last word on the legislative session, short session underway, as you look at anything spectacular coming out of the session.
This is kind of the session where the rule is to do no harm, since it's an election year. But I think that it's definitely going to be interesting, especially as we look at teacher pay. It doesn't appear that there's much political will on the behalf of the Republican caucuses to push that forward. However, I think it could really resonate with folks at home and in their communities, and especially in the ballot box this year.
Well, I think teacher pay will be an issue, but I also think educational issues in terms of testing, and the governor's very interested in that. I think you'll also hear a discussion about healthcare costs.
Kevin Brinegar said he thinks that'll be one of the big.
I think it's worth reminding ourselves it's only a short session. We have 2 months. Healthcare cost problems are a huge problem, but I think that the governor has supported an end to surprise billing, and then a more comprehensive claims database, so we can start with a strong data background as we look at this
It'd be nice
issue.
if we could get smoking, if we could get that smoking age adjusted.
And I think there's pretty much a consensus on that. That might happen.
How about the cell phone bill? How about no cell phones when you're driving?
I think that would be great.
That'll get some attention
thank you.
too.
Yes,
That'd be excellent.
absolutely.
It's all the time we have for another edition of The Insiders. Murray Clark, Laura Beck, Norris Cunningham, thank you one and all.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state, at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.